if you are watching this on Saturday, August 23rd, it is my birthday. So thank you for being here with me virtually to celebrate my day. I, in this video, plan to speak about some books that have profoundly changed or impacted my life, in hopes that you can find a book or two in this list that you can get into this upcoming season for fall or winter, because I truly believe that fall and winter are seasons for readers and for lovers, but mostly readers. And I think that it's the perfect time to dive into a project book, or maybe a book that you have felt intimidated by, that requires a little bit more time and care and attention. But I'm certain that there will be something in this list that you will love, and that might change your life the way that it did mine. Later in the video, I also want to talk about this idea of aging and why we are so terrified of aging and getting older, and things that feel kind of top of mind for me, at least, as I kind of sit with my birthday. And yeah, I think that'll be most of the video. And if you are wondering what I want for my birthday, it is your support and a love note. So subscribe to my YouTube and subscribe to my Substack, because that is my love child, and I put so much time and care and attention into it. And I write about philosophy, I write about fun, like seasonal stuff. It's a nice, healthy balance of all the things that I love and all the things that I create here and on TikTok, and just an extension of me and my heart. So go subscribe, YouTube and Substack, and you will make my day. You will make my whole birthday. I want to talk about books that have impacted my life the most. And these aren't necessarily the best books in the world. I mean, I might be biased. Some of them I truly believe are the best pieces of literature ever written, but they have made the most impact for me. So maybe they will for you too. This is in no particular order, but I am going to be starting with Clarice Lispector's A Breath of Life. This is really not a novel in the traditional sense. It's more like a dialogue between an author and the character that she's creating. And it spirals around questions of existence, morality, love, and art itself. It's very fragmented and raw, and it's written very much like a fever dream. And I think Clarice Lispector really taught me that language doesn't have to obey the rules. It can be pulled out of nothingness, and she showed me that words can exist in fragments and in silences and in breath itself. And this book really made death feel less terrifying. And for someone who is like me, very paranoid, hypochondriac, this was life-altering. And instead of feeling doomed, I felt held by the inevitability of mortality. And I think she really also carved a space for women in philosophy, which gave me permission to kind of step into this world unapologetically. So Jane Eyre is, if you haven't read it, it's a story about an orphan girl who grows up to be a governess at Thornfield Hall, where she falls in love with her employer, Mr. Rochester, only to uncover the dark secret locked away in the attic. It's part romance, part gothic thriller, and this was really my gateway into gothic literature. And even more than that, it was the book that made me realize that I was falling in love with reading. So it's really an experience for me, and it's not just a story. It's, you know, the moors, the candlelight, the locked doors. I felt it all so deeply, and it taught me that books could be immersive worlds, and that I've been chasing that feeling of this book ever since then. The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky is a massive Russian literature novel about three brothers: Ivan, who is the intellectual, Dmitri, who is the impulsive sensualist, and Alyosha, who is the spiritual one. And it's really about the murder of their father. But beyond plot, it is a book about God, morality, doubt, love, and freedom. And this was the first project book that I read, and I return to it every winter, and I revise my annotations like it is scripture. Every reread gives me something new. and it makes me learn something new about myself, about existence, about the divine. And it is not the book that you ever really finish. It's a book that you live alongside of. And I honestly believe that it is the most masterfully written piece of literature to ever exist. And it continues to shape me and change me every year that I read this book. This cover is a work of art. This book is also a work of art. It is Perfume by Patrick Susskind, and it is a book set in 18th century France, and it follows Grenouille, who is a man with no personal scent, but an extraordinary sense of smell. And he is obsessed with capturing the essence of beauty, and he turns to murder as a way of bottling human fragrance. It's very grotesque and gothic and hypnotic. And I read this while I was first falling deeply in love with fragrance. And it felt like discovering a mirror for that obsession in a strange way. It's grotesque and beautiful all at once, and it is fused scent with storytelling in a way that I had never really experienced before. And it also made me realize that fragrance could be art, narrative, even horror. It's not just something that you wear, but it really is the storytelling behind what you're smelling and how it affects memory, your body. It's a very visceral experience. The Book of Disquiet by Fernando Pessoa is not a novel. It is a collection of fragments, diary entries, musings under the semi-heteronym Bernardo. It is one of the greatest books of melancholy, and it drifts through life. It's a companion for disillusionment, and almost every single line in this book is underline worthy. It really reads like feeling like you are reading someone's diary. And I think his fragmented style also gave me permission to live in these fragments too, and to see disquiet, daydreaming, and drifting as a legitimate way of being. And it's a book that feels less read than inhabited. It's similar to Clarice Lispector's writing style in its fragments, which I really appreciate. Not everybody likes this type of literature. Some people very much crave a plot-driven novel. This is not that. So just keep that in mind when you are approaching Clarice Lispector, Fernando Pessoa, this type of literature. Okay, Fear and Trembling by Soren Kierkegaard. This is a philosophical work built around the biblical story of Abraham being asked to sacrifice Isaac. And Kierkegaard uses it to explore faith and doubt and what it means to take a leap into the absurd when logic and ethics fail. I have really spent the entirety of my life wrestling with faith and skepticism, and this book cracked that struggle that I've been dealing with, and it certainly did not give me this like neat answer, but it made me feel very raw and vulnerable enough to step into those questions again. And I think Kierkegaard is an author who really gave me a language for doubt and faith and for paradox. And I think that that's very difficult to do, especially pertaining to theology and philosophy and religion. It really opened the door to philosophy in a way that I hadn't felt before, particularly towards religion and faith and spirituality. Next is The Ethics of Ambiguity by Simone de Beauvoir, which is an existentialist manifesto with themes of freedom and responsibility and the ambiguities of the human condition. De Beauvoir is a brilliant philosopher, and in this book she really argues that instead of searching for absolute meaning, we have to embrace the uncertainty and to live authentically. And as a perfectionist who clings to control, I have always struggled with not knowing the meaning of life, and de Beauvoir shifted everything for me, and she showed me that ambiguity isn't a flaw, but really just the condition of existence itself, and that in order to live fully, I have to stop fighting the unknown and lean into it and embrace the fact that you can't always know everything, and the more you know, the less you realize that you know, and it is an endless spiral of existentialism as it pertains to knowledge and control. So I have learned to relinquish some of that control. I am a Virgo, but I'm doing my best. The Nun by Denis Diderot is written in the 18th century, and it tells the story of a young woman who is forced against her will to go into a convent. And she narrates the corruption and the cruelty and the abuse that she suffers under religious authority, making the book this like biting critique of the church. And it hit me in a very visceral way. You know, as a teenager, I went through a lot with my dad and him sending me to these places that were very tangentially related to a place like this, where you are forced to do things, you are forced to act a certain way, believe a certain way. And like these places, you know, they got shut down and eventually because of all these different other reasons. But this struck a chord with me because it's reading about cruelty that is hidden under the guise of holiness. And it resonated with these experiences that I went through and the trauma that I went through as a teen, which was very painful but also cathartic. And to see it written so nakedly, like very much resonated with me in a way. This really is an experience of a read, and it is wildly entertaining and addictive. The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus is his foundational essay on the absurd. And using the myth of Sisyphus, who is condemned to endlessly push a rock uphill, and basically argues that life is meaningless, but that it doesn't mean that we have to live in despair. Instead, we must imagine Sisyphus happy. I think most of my existence has often felt Sisyphusian, and I've really had to do everything the hardest way possible. And I think Camus in this book gave me a philosophy for that, not to escape it, but to really live inside of it and to push the rock uphill anyway, even if I don't know where I'm going sometimes. Last but certainly not least, and I have an honorable mention after this one, this is Coraline by Neil Gaiman, and this is a dark fantasy children's story about a girl who finds a parallel world behind a door in her house, and at first it seems better than her own until she discovers that her other mother wants to keep her forever. It is creepy and whimsical and unforgettable, and this was really like my gateway into weird gothic girl fairy tale books. It's eerie and magical, and it feels like this book was written for me. It showed me that children's books can be strange and dark and enchanting, and that there is nothing wrong with loving children's literature at any age. In fact, out of all of the books that I have mentioned to you, with the exception of a couple, I think I've learned more about life, myself, how to live fully in this world from children's literature than I have from any philosophy book. And it's strange to kind of approach those books differently when you're an adult, but it's very eye-opening. So if you are looking for something profound, go to the children's section, but classics, because a lot of new children's literature is absolutely atrocious, and it kind of breaks my heart. Maybe one day I'll write my own children's book, because I think they're important, and I'm very disappointed with the current selection that we have now. But anyways. Okay, my bonus book for you is Frog and Toad by Arnold Lobel. This is a collection of very gentle stories about two friends, or frogs and toads, who are navigating the small joys and trials of everyday life. And out of all the books that I've ever read, like I mentioned, this one probably taught me the most about life. It is so simple and kind and profound in the ways that only children's books can be. I was very torn about picking a children's literature book for this, because there are so many. Like, I love Bramley Hedge, Beatrix Potter, Matilda. I could go on, even Alice in Wonderland. All of these books, Secret Garden, I don't think that anything like that can be created ever again. But I promise you, if it's been a while, go back and read them and see how it changes you with where you are in your life right now. So Melissa, Beware of Pity, sent me the most beautiful silk pajamas, and I'm enjoying them in bed with a book, which is exactly what I wanted to do for my birthday, is just chill and have a cozy breakfast and watch my favorite films and not have to worry about anything crazy, extravagant. I just want to be cozy and content. So that's what I'm doing. So usually for birthdays, I'm not really like a cake person. I like pie. Pie is like one of my favorite desserts, or a really, really, really good like chocolate chip cookie. And I'm not trying to sound super basic, but Levain makes the best vegan chocolate chip cookies I have ever tasted. I either want that, and I know I just said that I'm not a cake person, but I do like princess cake. So I'm just trying to decide what treat I want, and I'll probably go with, I don't know. The thing about having a birthday in late August is that you can have pie throughout the year, which is why I like pie, but it's just teetering on apple season. So like usually for my birthday, I'll have an apple pie a la mode, like freshly baked pie with vanilla bean ice cream, which is so good. It's my favorite. So I can't decide between those three. They're kind of on rotation. I like pie and cookies because they're not too sweet. I don't like desserts that are too sweet. So we'll see. We'll see what I end up having. I realized that I have not given you a proper tour of my bookshelf or my books. And you might be wondering why there are very specific books that I have on the book altar behind me versus the behemoth stack of books that I have over there. So I think I'll give you a little tour of my shelf behind me. It's kind of chaotic, but I'll kind of show you the thought process behind why certain books are there and why certain books are over there. In order for a book to truly make it on my altar, it has to have changed my life or had a very profound sentimental impact for me. So as you can see, this is probably one of my favorite books of all time. I have philosophy here, this vintage Bible. I'm not religious. I have my Paris reviews right here. I have little sample tinctures in my Fiorucci cup. Actually that's the Grimm's fairy tale right there. Resting on the top of my altar is my perfume tray for the month and the perfumes that I'm rotating through. We are in August, so that's on my current rotation. I also have a match collection from all of my favorite restaurants and places that I've been in New York City. I actually made this little collage at Happy Medium, which is another really cute, like honestly, date place if you want to take a girlfriend or a friend or a solo date. I really love the place. You can do a bunch of different crafts there. There is no method to my madness for the books down here, but I do love all of them. And these are books that I would go and reread if I wanted to, or, you know, most of these are philosophy and classics. I will say this, I do not like Sylvia Plath. I went through a phase where I read her literature, and as I got deeper into her literature, I couldn't get past the racism, and just the way that she writes was very irritating to me in that way. And I have my stack of NYRBs right next to it. I do not have a bookshelf, a legitimate bookshelf. And when I do get one, I would like to organize these in a much more cohesive way. I don't think that most of us are afraid of dying. I think that what we're afraid of is getting to the end of our lives and realizing that we have never really lived to our absolute fullest. I think the panic that creeps in when you are approaching your birthday, or you're lying in bed at 3 a.m. thinking about all of the different paths that you didn't take. It's that like sinking feeling after an hour of like doom scrolling, and you realize that you weren't really present for anything in those moments, and it feels very personal, like you are the only one who can't figure it out, and everyone else around you seems to have figured it out, and there's something that you're missing. And I think there's a reason why it feels sharper now that modern life has turned time into commodity. We talk about spending time and saving time and wasting time, and that every second is supposed to be optimized for productivity or for money, for self-improvement. Even if you take a nap in the afternoon, you feel guilty. Or if you watch or binge a Netflix show and you find a way to turn it on yourself and call it procrastination, even rest gets rebranded as failure. And there's also this endless stream of comparison that we are fed as we scroll through other people's lives. And whether they're announcing a promotion or their engagement or a trip that they just took to Italy for the summer, you're maybe sitting on the couch with takeout, thinking to yourself, what am I doing wrong? Their lives seem so curated and complete, and yours feels messy and half finished. And I think that is the danger of social media, and it is why so much of, I think, recent trends in social media have been more of an authentic, less curated approach. But even then, when people try to not be curated, everything is intentional, and it creates the illusion that there is a correct way to live. And if you're not living it, you're wasting your chance, you're wasting your time, and maybe you're not, in your head, good enough compared to those around you. But this type of fear itself is not new. We didn't invent this fear. And one of the philosophers, Seneca, at that time was warning Romans about 2,000 years ago. And he said that, it's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. And I think that is so prevalent in our reality, and maybe you're wondering, like, what do we mean by wasting time? And what do we mean when we say wasting life? And usually it's not about hours lost. It's about, when we say waste, what we really mean is, I don't know if what I'm doing is enough, whether it's enough progress or if it has enough meaning or enough proof that your life is on track. I think we crave a certain certainty or a certificate at the end that says, congratulations, you did this right. You picked the right path. You picked the right job, and no one can give us that. And so inevitably we panic, especially if you're somebody like me who thrives off of validation, academic validation, familial validation, all of these things that make us, or think that will make us, complete. There is a paradox of choice and modern freedom that makes it worse. And for most of history, people didn't have much of a choice about how to live. You really became what your parents were. You lived where you were born. You married who was chosen for you. And today, we're told that we can do anything and do anything. Yet, capitalism and everything else inhibits us from doing so. But I think the concept of you can be anything is a lot more prevalent than how it was back when our grandparents were younger, which sounds liberating, but also the infinite choice means infinite ways to imagine that you chose wrong. Every decision that you make begins to feel like a fork in the road. Should you move to a new city or stay in your hometown? Should you get married or should you wait? Should you have kids or should you not? Should you chase the stable job or risk the creative one? And whichever you pick, the ghost of the other life will always follow you. And in psychology, they call this the paradox of choice, where the more options that we have, the harder it is to feel satisfied. So the fear of wasting life isn't really about time running out, it's about missing the one right version of your life. I think, as you may have guessed, this is very analogous to the fig tree analogy from the Sylvia Plath book. And I know that there's a lot of theories and thoughts, and I'm not going to go into that, but I think it is profound in that it's very relevant to, I think, our generation today. And I think what philosophy can offer is that, it doesn't necessarily eradicate this fear, but it reframes it in a different way that makes it seem more positive. Jean-Paul Sartre reminds us that there is no script, there is no perfect version of your life hidden somewhere waiting to be discovered. You make meaning by choosing. And Camus goes even further by saying that life is absurd, that it doesn't come with a built-in purpose, and yet, instead of despairing, we can rebel. We can live fully and intensely because of that uncertainty and because it is finite. And as for theologians, the ache itself is revealing our hunger, not to waste life is a kind of longing for transcendence. Basically proof that life connects to something eternal. Even if you don't believe in God, the longing itself says something about us. And I often find myself asking, what if waste is impossible? But I also think that, maybe waste is impossible. Even when the hours you label wasted, or, the relationships that have failed, the jobs that didn't work out, the afternoons spent scrolling, still they shaped you. They are still very much a part of your story. So maybe the only real waste of time is the time spent panicking about not living enough, because we are only a moment. And the measure of a life isn't whether it was efficient or optimized, it's whether you were awake to it, whether you noticed that it was happening, whether you loved and lived at your absolute max capacity. Inevitably, we will all die with unfinished dreams, unread books, places we never saw, but I don't think that constitutes as failure. I think that that's just the inevitability of life. So when that fear creeps in and you find yourself asking, am I wasting my life? Maybe the answer is so much more simpler than we think, because waste is not possible. The only way to miss your life and not to notice, if it was happening or not, is asking the question of whether or not you're trying to live well. And that alone is proof that you are not wasting it. There were so many things that happened this month that completely, or will inevitably, change the course of my life. And I am somebody who feels very indecisive when it comes to big life-altering decisions with myself. Normally, with other things in life, I'm a very decisive person, but when it feels permanent, I tend to flinch, and it's very difficult for me to feel confident in something that I'm about to do. I had to make a few very difficult decisions very recently, and I feel very confident in these decisions that I've made, whereas in the past I have often let the opinions and doubts and fears of other people predicate whether or not I should do something or shouldn't, even though it is very much my life. And so I've just learned over the years that take advice from people who you love and respect, and there will always be people who give you advice that is unwarranted, but always remember the source. And always remember that at the end of the day, you're the only person who has to live with the decisions that you make. And so there will be a lot of changes in my life coming very soon, but I think that I've made the right decision. And I know that it's not going to be easy, but I feel confident nevertheless. So just know that if you are also somebody who tends to wallow on your birthday and just kind of fall into a deep existential pit, you are not alone. I do feel a lot more gratuitous this year compared to other years, because I just think that being able to age is such a privilege that not very many people get to do. And I'm still young, but I just am trying to feel a lot more gratitude as opposed to, throwing a pity party because I don't want to get older. Because it's a privilege to get older.